in the middle of this short, heartfelt prayer, this miraculous thing happened to me, and I was instantly, completely healed. 6 different kinds of imbalances cause all of our symptoms. There is an energy that emanates from the presence of God that fills the universe. It's a very, very good thing that we cannot remember where we were before we came here. I like to call it a veil. Surrounding the stage were about 200 spirits, and it came to me who they were. When a trapped emotion like this is released from a living human being, and it's been passed down from 10, 20 generations ago, all those ancestors experience a release as well. This is a quantum phenomenon, you see. The consciousness level of the world is expanding, and we're waking up. A voice spoke to me when it said, "This is a sacred calling." It's like my brain was opened up and this new consciousness was just kind of poured in. I woke up one morning and my mind was full of instruction, and the instruction was very clear. When I was 7, I was really sick with the measles, and I had overheard my parents talking, and I knew the plan. I knew the plan was I was going into the hospital the next day, and I was going into something called an oxygen tent. That was, you know how it is when you're a kid. You remember listening to your parents, and they think you're not listening, or that you don't know what's going on, but kids totally know. So yeah. I knew, and anyway, my folks had made a bed for me on a couch in the living room, so that I could be near their bedroom, so they could keep an eye on me, and everyone else had gone to bed. And this happened a long time ago, but I remember this like it happened yesterday. My folks came into the room, and I'm lying there on the couch, just feeling really nauseated and feverish and just feeling really ill. And my mother said to my father, she said, "Honey, will you kneel down with me and say a prayer for our boy so he'll be able to get well?" And so my dad agreed. And now my dad wasn't a preacher or a pastor or anything like that. He was in real estate and construction, but, believed in God. And so the two of them kneel down by the side of the couch. My dad starts offering this prayer. And in the middle of this short, heartfelt prayer, this miraculous thing happened to me where this change began at the top of my head, and it went whoosh through my body to the soles of my feet. And I was instantly, completely healed. And in the space of about 1 second. And I held my tongue till my dad was done praying, which didn't take long. And when he was done, I said, "I'm better, I'm better, I'm better." And they said, "All right, that's fine. Go back to sleep. Tomorrow we're going in the oxygen tent." And, to go from being really sick one moment to being totally 110% healthy in the next instant is so crazy and really so bizarre that that experience is burned into every cell of my being, every particle of my being. I still remember that event like it happened yesterday. It's wild. But I learned 2 things from that. I learned, number one, that healing doesn't necessarily have to take place over a long period of time. It can happen instantaneously. I know because I had the experience. It happened to me, right? And the other thing it taught me is that there's a higher power that we can draw upon, because that's why it happened, because my dad was asking God, higher power, source energy, to heal me, and it worked. And so I just kind of filed those things away, for a while. But that was really the beginning for me, because it was such a profoundly powerful experience that, of course, like I said, it was just completely unforgettable. And that was really the beginning of my journey on this healing path, right? But about 7 years later, you know how things kind of run in those 7-year cycles, right? About 7 years later, I was 13 years old, and I ended up with kidney disease. I started getting these pains in my back that were, that suddenly just reached this unbelievable crescendo where they would hit me out of nowhere. And I mean, it would feel like I'd been run through with a sword or a telephone pole or something. It was just unbelievably painful. And these pains would knock me to the ground or take my breath away. And it was really terrifying, honestly. So my parents decided that they would take me to the hospital because they were really worried about me. And they ran these tests and they said that I had kidney disease. And my kidneys were basically fighting for their lives. My kidneys were forming scar tissue and, hemorrhaging on a low level all the time. But there was nothing medical that they could do for me. There was no medical treatment available. And so, I found this out later, a number of years later, because I was only 13. My folks didn't tell me a whole lot. But what they were told was that what I had was about 50% fatal. But there was really nothing they could do for me. And so it was up to me. Back then, they didn't do kidney transplants. So if my kidneys didn't last, they didn't, survive this battle, and that was the end of me. So it was kind of a scary time for me, mainly because the pains were so intense. So my folks decided they would take me to see some alternative doctors. And since the regular Western mainstream doctors didn't have anything to offer, they took me to see some doctors who were a couple of old-time osteopathic doctors that when the osteopathic profession started to present a lot of competition to the the American medical establishment, they essentially went to the osteopathic community and they said, look, we'll make you MDs. You can prescribe drugs and be just like us. And so they swallowed that hook. And these two, though, didn't want to have anything to do with Western medicine. And so they stayed out of it. And so they practiced out on the edge of town in the middle of a wheat field in a trailer house. And I can remember going to see them and having to scrape the mud off my shoes to get in, to their trailer house, which was their clinic. But sometimes we would drive up there and there would be a whole busload of people from some other state that would be driving away because these people were known to really be wonderful healers. And so they started working on me, and they were old-time osteopathic doctors. So they started working on the alignment of my spine. And as they started working on me and realigning things, I started to notice that the pains immediately started to be less frequent and less severe. And within about 3 weeks, I felt like I was totally better. And I didn't have any more pain at all. So my folks took me back to the hospital and they ran all the tests again and they confirmed that I was better.
No medications, no, just natural treatment.
Nothing. Nope. It's all gone. And so in my 13-year-old brain, okay, it was very clear to me that these people that practiced out on the edge of town in this trailer house, they were the ones that seemed to know what they were doing. Even though all the money I could tell was in this other big, huge, multi-story clinic, it was these other people that seemed to know. So it was kind of this weird anachronism. But I decided at age 13, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a doctor like these guys. And I thought, if I need to practice out on the edge of town in a trailer house in the middle of a muddy wheat field, that's okay with me because I was 13. And I thought, well, that seems to be the natural habitat of doctors that know how to get results, right? And so I kind of filed that away because I was only 13. And finished school and went to, I was actually in college. I was going to college at BYU, Hawaii. And I was trying to figure out my schedule, and I needed a couple more credits. And the only class that seemed to really fit with my schedule was this class on computer programming. And I knew nothing about computer programming. I wasn't interested in it, but the class fit the schedule. I thought, okay, this will maybe be kind of interesting. Who knows? So I took this class and immediately discovered that I was an absolute, complete, closeted nerd, right? And I loved it so much. I mean, it was just overwhelming to me that you could take a machine and you could give it instructions and get it to do things. And of course, back then, the things that it could do were really so basic. I mean,
somewhat primitive relative to what we're up to today, but still
so
super
primitive.
cool.
I mean, we didn't even have floppy disks at that point. It was, so anyway, but that suddenly changed my life in this big direction because now, hey, I'm a computer programmer, and I spent a year teaching myself and learning everything that I could, and then I had a business called the Computer Tutor, which I thought was really clever. And this is back in the early 80s, just in time for the personal computer revolution, right? And so I was there, when the IBM PC first came out and Apple first came out with the Mac in 1984. And, I was a young man then and doing programming, and it was really fun. I would go into people's businesses that, where they would purchase a computer, but they wouldn't know what to do with it because there was no software. So I would write this basic, software that would enable them to get some use out of this machine. And I loved doing that. It was so much fun. I was learning so much and meeting a lot of interesting people. And so I went back to college. I got married in the meantime in 1981. And in 1984, I guess it was, I was back in college, and I was taking classes studying international relations and data systems and things. And my plan was to get my master's degree in business. And then I was going to go to work, maybe for the State Department or some big company like IBM or something like that. I had these kind of a split major. And in the winter of 1984, it was around Christmas time, 1984, my wife and I drove home to Montana, where I'm from. And we went to my parents' house, the house I grew up in, and we're sitting around at one point with my mother and father talking. And out of the blue, my dad says to me, out of the blue, he asks me this question. He said, are you sure that you don't want to go to chiropractic school? Because it seems like a great career and you've always wanted to do that, which is about as close to the osteopathic, career that I could find. And I said, no, I'm going this other direction. And he said, well, why don't you think about it one more time? So I thought, well, okay. So my wife made up a pro and con list, of these two different careers, having our own practice or going to work for some big company. And the list was pretty long on both sides. And so I wasn't convinced, didn't know what to do, really. And so that night, having learned that you can get answers to prayer, that night, we got on our knees and prayed about this. Because this was a big decision that was, going to affect the rest of our lives, right? You've been in that kind of situation probably, right? Where you're at a fork in the road.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like we talk about forks in the road, but somehow there's a certain maturity, like this. It's only around these sort of, like, when I hit my major fork in the road, I was like 30, 32. And I was like, it was weird almost because I was like, oh, this is what a genuine fork feels like. I've had forks in the past, but there was always one that was always naturally the moral high ground or intuitively the right way to go. But this was, when I hit a fork, it was like, oh, I could literally go either way and both are going to work out just dandy, actually. But it's
that's exactly how this felt.
Yeah, but it's like, which one? And it's like, oh, but the rest of my life is going to look completely different based on which path I take. But, and it's hard. You feel stuck.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I could have taken either path and it could have been great. And they were both very compelling. So got on our knees that night, prayed about this and asked for help. And so a few hours later, I woke up middle of the night and it was as if I'd been having a dream, but I couldn't remember the dream. But instead, when I woke up, I was just filled with, it was like the aftermath of the dream. It was like all these thoughts of how wonderful it is to be able to help people naturally, and heal people and serve people, right? And I remember I would counter that. This happened 3 times that night, by the way. And I would counter these feelings by thinking, well, the new IBM PC has a 4 megahertz processor or 2, or who knows. I can get 16K of RAM now or whatever. Just, really dumb, really dumb things. And so, but that's kind of how it went the whole night. It was like I'd wake up and then I would counter those feelings. And the next day I still didn't know what to do because I thought, yeah, it's true. It's great to help people. But then on the other hand, computers, I was in love with computers. My wife and I didn't have a couch for 10 years, but we went through several new computers, during that time. It's kind of sad. My wife was a computer widow.
Hashtag priorities.
Yeah, poor thing. So anyway, yeah, kind of sad. But anyway, so the next night, on our knees again, asking for guidance. And on the second night, the same experience happened again. And I was awakened 3 times on the second night. But each time that I was awakened on the second night, these thoughts were exponentially more powerful. So that on the third time that I was awakened on the second night, the thoughts of service to mankind and humanity and the whole entire world was just absolutely overwhelming. And in that moment, a voice spoke to me as clearly as I'm speaking to you right now. And it said, "This is a sacred calling." And I thought, okay, I get it. I accept, basically. And so, so that was the beginning of my turn down one path, and probably it reminds me of the poem by Robert Frost, 2 roads diverged into a snowy wood, and and I chose the one less traveled by, and it's made all the difference. And so anyway, I went to chiropractic school, and it was a wonderful experience. And when I got out of school, I figured, higher power, God's gotten me into this, and so maybe God will help me. And so I developed this private personal habit. And that was that whenever I would go to work on a patient, I would just take a moment and just silently ask for help. And, the interesting thing about that is that there were times, not many, I can count them on one hand, but over the roughly 18 or so years that I was in practice, there were times when I needed to understand something. There was something going on that this patient had happening, and I didn't know how to help them. And the information in response to that ask, the information would just flood in. And it was an amazing thing. Didn't happen every time. Didn't happen very often, really, but it did happen. And, I think that when we ask for help from the higher power, or whatever you want to call it, that information, those answers come. Sometimes they come right away and they're dramatic. Most often they come in a very subtle way that it's very easy to miss, because it can come as just a very slight kind of feeling or intuition or intention or impression, or maybe a thought or an idea that we have.
Hey there, inspired souls. Just want to take a moment out to thank all of you that are subscribed to the podcast. Thank you so much for your incredible love, your support. Everything we do around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment. As I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. It helps everything we're doing. Thank you so much in advance for helping us promote love, positivity, and wisdom and wellness around the world. Back to Dr. Bradley in today's podcast.
So anyway, as time went on in my practice, I began to realize that the subconscious mind within each one of my patients was actually a computer, and that I could communicate with it. Now, how this began really was really interesting. I had for quite a number of years, I used a method called activator method, and it had to realign a bone, you'd use this little metal gun, little stainless steel, kind of a handheld plunger gun, had a rubber tip, and you'd squeeze it, and then it would fire just a little impulse, and we could use that to realign bones, and patients liked it because it was very, very gentle and so on. Part of this method was that it involved the use of this special table. And this table would stand up vertically, and then a patient would stand against the table, put their nose in the slot in the middle, and grab onto the handles on the sides. And then I would press a button, and the table would lay down flat, and this foot plate would drop away so that I could get a really clear picture of what their leg length actually was. And the idea was that when a patient was done with their visit, their leg length would be balanced, right? And in this methodology, what I found and what they teach is that if a bone is out of alignment, for example, if you push on that bone, it kind of irritates the system, and the leg length will actually become more imbalanced. And when you correct a bone and then you push on it again, if you fix it, it won't imbalance anymore. The leg length will stay the same. It was really cool, right? So I did this for a number of years. And then one day, this patient comes in, this guy, and he's lying down on the table, and I've just finished his treatment. And I've fixed everything I can find. His legs are totally balanced. And for some reason, I start thinking about his left kidney. And I come back and I check his leg length, and all of a sudden, one leg is like 3/4 of an inch short. And I thought, wait a minute, what? I just balanced this guy. So I thought about his right kidney for a moment, came back and checked his legs, and they were perfectly balanced. Then I thought about his left kidney again, and all of a sudden, it's 3/4 of an inch off. And I thought, what? What is going on here? And that was a really major turning point, because I realized that his computer system somehow, the spirit within him, his subconscious mind, was somehow in communication with my mind. And so from that point on, I began to experiment with this. And I found that I could actually think about a particular bone. And if that bone was balanced and aligned, there would be no change in the leg length. But if I found a bone that was misaligned, boop, I'd get a big change. And then I started learning that I could ask about organs and glands and all kinds of things, and I could get yeses and nos from the computer. And I came to realize that I think the most powerful computer that exists in the known universe actually is within each one of us, you see. Yeah, we have our own chat GPT inside of us. It's smarter than the chat GPT out there, at least as far as what's going on with us, right? And so I learned to ask these questions, and it was really interesting. In fact, let me share one other story with you. What I would do, okay, and this went on for a number of years. A patient would come in, they'd lay down on this table, the table would lay down flat, I'd look at their leg length, and then I would just ask questions silently, and I could get the leg length to change, to give me yeses and nos, right? It's a binary system. The subconscious mind is a binary computer, at least as far as its interface goes. That's how we can communicate with it. We can ask questions, and it'll give us back yeses and nos. And that's, it's the same thing as muscle testing. You'll get a strong arm or a weak arm, or your fingers will be strong or weak, depending on, if you're saying something true or untrue, etc. So one day, this guy comes in. It's for about his, maybe third or fourth visit, and kind of a routine visit. And he lays down on the table. I go to check his leg length, and my routine at this point was to just silently ask, okay, show me a yes, show me a no. And the yes would be balanced, and the no would be imbalanced. And so I do this routine on this guy. And for the first time in years, I could get no response at all. I try it again. Okay, show me a yes, show me a no. I get no response. He's completely unresponsive. I had never seen this. And I looked up at that point, and suddenly I noticed what this guy was wearing. He's got on this t-shirt, this white t-shirt, and on the back of the t-shirt, he has a decal about this big, and it's a really evil-looking clown. The It clown from Stephen King, right? And it's got fangs, dripping blood. It's just really, really dark looking. And I thought, I wonder if that has anything to do with this. So I took a piece of paper and I covered it up. And I hadn't said anything to him at all. I just covered it up with a piece of paper, came back and just mentally thought, okay, show me a yes, show me a no. I got perfect responses suddenly, right? And I thought, no way. And so I'd uncover it and I could get nothing. I would cover it up. I got perfect answers. And I thought, wow, that is really wild. Finally, after doing this for a couple of minutes, I told him what was going on. I said, this t-shirt, I said, I think, it's
7, yeah.
it's putting out some negative energy. And I told him what was happening. And then, he just thought that was too weird. I never saw the guy again. But that taught me an interesting lesson, right? And so, oh man. And so gradually as time went on, more and more opened up, right? About, as I was working on people and trying to figure out what was wrong with people. I remember one time I had a patient that came in, a woman who had been in a car accident about a month before. And I started working on her and, she had gotten kind of a neck injury and a whiplash. And so I was working on her and doing my best to make sure that she would get well as fast as possible. But about 3 weeks go by and she's still in pain, especially from the base of her skull all the way down to her left shoulder. And I thought, okay, this is weird. Her pain should be going away. Why is she still in pain? This is weird. So I sent her next door. There was an MRI center next door. They did a magnetic resonance image. And that came back and her spine looked absolutely textbook perfect. I mean, as perfect as I've ever seen a spine. And I thought, okay, there must be something else going on. Well, I was learning how to communicate with the subconscious, right? The internal computer. So I started asking some questions because I was at a point where I was desperate to figure this out. And so I'm asking, all right, well, is there a bone that's misaligned that's causing this? No. Well, is there something else that's misaligned that's causing this? Yes. Oh, okay. Is it a gland? No. Is it an organ? Yes. Oh, it's an organ that's out of alignment. Well, let's see. Is it the brain? No. Is it the right lung? No. Left lung? No. Is it the heart? Yes. The heart. So her subconscious said her heart, in this accident, her heart had gotten a little bit out of alignment, right? In the accident, probably not more than a millimeter or something, but that can have an effect, I've learned. And so, so I asked some more questions, figured out exactly how the heart was misaligned, in what directions. And then to counter that, I put the flat of my hand, or the heel of my palm, on her breastbone and figured out exactly what direction I needed to give an impulse to counter this misalignment. And just very gently put a little energy in there. And all of a sudden, instantaneously, the pain was gone, right? And she was so impressed, she actually became my office manager and worked for me for a number of years. So this is a really interesting thing. In my practice, you see, I had this perfect kind of laboratory, because I had people coming in all the time with all kinds of things. As my level of expertise became better, as I learned really to communicate with the subconscious mind better and more effectively, the cases became more and more difficult, right? And so one day I remember, to give you an idea, here's one of those examples where I got an immediate answer. This guy comes in to see me, and he said that 4 years before, he was in a car accident. And he was parked at a stoplight and was hit from behind by another car going a pretty high rate of speed. And it damaged his car and he got whiplash. But he said that his neck still hurt like the day after the accident. And it was 4 years before. And he'd seen a couple of other doctors for this. And I thought, okay, this is kind of weird. Why does his neck still hurt that much? He was a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale of pain. So, I mean, It wasn't just a little pain. He was really in severe pain. And so again, my habit was to ask for help. And so basically here's what I said silently. Okay. I said, Father in heaven, this seems kind of weird. If there's something that I need to know about this, help me to understand it, because this seems odd to me. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. And boom, suddenly this answer floods into me. And the answer was that when this guy was hit in the accident, there was all this kinetic energy that was released, right? And that's the energy that bent the frame of his car and crumpled his fenders and went through his body. But the answer was that some of that energy from 4 years before got stuck in this guy's neck. And that was the answer. And I thought, whoa. So some of the energy from the accident 4 years ago is still in his neck? So what I did is I took a hand or a magnet, I don't remember, and went down the middle of his back, down the governing meridian, right down the middle of the spine a few times with an intention to release this energy from the accident. 3 swipes, and then I said, okay, move your neck around now. So he looks left and right and up and down and tilts his head and he said, how did you do that? And I said, well, how does it feel? And he said, well, I'd say it's about a 2 now. And I said, well, when's the last time it was a 2? And he said, oh, before the accident for sure, right? And so we call that physical trauma energy. And just about everybody has this kind of energy stuck in their body. And so, of course, I learned all about emotional baggage too, and how we develop emotional energies that get stuck in the body from those experiences that we go through that we would rather not go through, the difficult things in our lives. And so that was interesting. So because I was a computer programmer, right, I always had a computer there with me in my practice. And as I would find something new, I would try to fit it into this map that I was building, like this thing, like physical trauma. Where does this go? Well, this is an energetic imbalance, so I'd put it in there. But I found all kinds of things. And as time went on, I found really that there are 6 different kinds of imbalances that cause all of our symptoms. And those 6 kinds of imbalances are things like nutritional imbalances, nutritional deficiencies, for example. And there are 5 more, but let me give you an example of this one.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
he's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing. And Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive, and yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast.
One day, this young woman comes into my office. She's about 26, 27 years old, as I recall. Very athletic young woman. She just got released from the hospital. She's been hospitalized for 5 days with this pain in her right lower abdomen. It's about a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale. They ran every test in 5 days. They ran every test they had, and all the tests were negative. So they finally released her from the hospital. They said, we can't really help you. We don't know what's going on. So she comes in to see me. And so I have this computer system that has basically what you'd call a mind map, kind of a brain map, a knowledge base of all the things that I have found with people. And one of the areas is about nutrition. So what I'm doing is I'm asking her subconscious mind, right, through muscle testing, is there something I can do to help you with this? And I found a couple of trapped emotions and released those. And I found a couple of other imbalances and cleared those. And then finally, I was just about done. And the very last thing that showed up was that she needed chromium. So I'm taken into, by the yeses and nos I'm getting from her subconscious mind, I'm taken to this area where I've got a chart of nutrients and columns and rows, and I'm taken to chromium. And I thought, okay, chromium, well, that's really good for blood sugar. So it's just an incidental finding. It doesn't have anything to do with her pain. And I couldn't find anything else. Her subconscious mind said there wasn't anything else to work on. And so she's still in pain. I mean, not any change at all in her pain level. She's still a 9. So the next day she comes in, and now she's like 10 plus, right? And I remember thinking, okay, it's got to be appendicitis because, the pain is so severe. I don't know how in the world they missed this in the hospital. But I didn't know what else to do. So I started asking some questions. And out of all the thousands of possibilities in the body code, I was taken to this chart of nutrients. Column A, this particular cell, chromium again. And only then did I remember, oh, wait, chromium showed up yesterday. I thought it was just an incidental finding. But I told her, look, I don't know why, but I think your body really needs chromium. And I said, I want you to leave my office right now, go down the street to the health food store, find the chromium tablets, and don't even wait. Just, buy them and then ask them for water and go ahead and take some while you're there and then come back. 20 minutes later, this very athletic young woman is literally jumping up and down in my waiting room saying, I'm fixed. She was so excited because the pain had been so severe for all that time. And she said to me, how did that work? And I said, I have no idea. And I still have no idea. But I said to her, the beautiful thing about this is that your subconscious mind, the computer inside of you, knew exactly what you needed. Now, why this was being caused by apparently a deficiency of chromium, I said, I have absolutely no idea. But luckily, your subconscious was able to communicate that, and we were able to solve the problem. And that pain never came back. So, here's what happened. I had experiences like that over the years that I was in practice. And as time went on, eventually I put together this whole knowledge base that really only existed in my computer, right? It didn't exist anywhere else. And yes, I did make backups, right?
We've finally floppy disks have arrived.
Right, exactly. And eventually I got this message from up above that it was time for me to get out of my practice and I needed to write a book about the emotion code, right? And so that book came out I left practice in 2004. That book came out in 2007. In fact, it came out, it was either June or July in 2007, right around the same time, I think within a week or so, of Steve Jobs' famous announcement of the iPhone, which is just such an epic presentation, for a nerd like me.
Oh, I remember.
I actually watched it again recently. It's just so cool. And, really changed things for us. Well, about a year after the Emotion Code book came out, I woke up one morning and my mind was full of instruction. And the instruction was very clear. The instruction was, you need to take everything that you've learned about natural healing and put it into a self-study course that anyone can learn and make it available to everyone, everywhere. And I thought, well, are you sure about this? It seems like it could require some actual work, kind of lazy. So I sat on this instruction for about 3 months. I mean, thinking about it constantly and trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? And finally, higher power made it possible. And so about a year later, the body code came out, and that's body code 1.0. And now the body code, of course, it's an app, and it comes out. You can have it on your phone, your mobile device, your desktop, your laptop, but it gives anybody a way to find and fix these imbalances, and that's what the book looks like. And so in the book, you'll see that on a certain page we have what we call the body code map. These are the 6 different kinds of imbalances that cause all of our symptoms. And so these are things like down here we have nutrition and lifestyle. That's where I found that imbalance with her. Toxins of all kinds. Circuitry and the systems of the body are here. This includes disconnections between the spirit and the physical body, organs, glands, things like that. Energies, trapped emotions, and physical traumas and things are up here.
Like that gentleman's neck, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then pathogens is here, and then structural misalignments are here. And so basically the way that this works, if you get the book, you can actually learn the whole system from the book. And then you'll notice, it's probably hard to see where you are, but every single one of these symbols has a page number. And so if you, for example, find an imbalance going on in this one, you might be taken to pathogens, okay? And in fact, let me tell you a story about pathogens, because this is really interesting.
Yeah.
One day, a patient comes in to see me, and I had seen her before, but it had been a couple of years. And she tells me that she has been diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus, right? Which is one of the viruses that causes chronic fatigue and so on. So she's had blood tests done and everything. They've identified this. So I started thinking about, okay, what am I going to do to help her get over this, help her body to heal from this? And I had this habit of asking for help, right? This is another one of those times. And so in my mind, I essentially just said, all right, Father in heaven, if there's a better way to help her, help me to understand it. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. As a Christian, that's how I pray. But people pray all kinds of different ways, and that's fine. But this is what worked for me. And all of a sudden this answer floods in. It was like my brain was opened up and this new consciousness was just kind of poured in, right? And here's what it was. It was a new understanding. And the understanding was, okay, you can think of a virus as being like a little physical thing, right? Infinitesimally small, but a physical thing. But there's another way to think about it. If you can think about a virus as pure energy, then what it does is it frees your mind to the extent that you can wrap your mind around that idea. To that same extent, it will free your mind to be able to manipulate that energy, just like a trapped emotion or any other kind of energy or a physical trauma energy or anything else. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool. So I swiped a few times down her back, with an intention to release this energy from her body. And over time, I was able to help her. Well, this was part one of the answer to this whole, question. Part two came a couple of months later. This woman comes in to see me, and she's had this chronic cough that's been going on for about a month. If she breathes in deeply at all, she begins to cough uncontrollably. And so I tested her using the body code and asking questions, and her subconscious mind came back with that this was a virus. And I had a list, there's a list of viruses in the body code. And so I tested to see what virus it was. And it was the common cold virus. Okay. And before COVID happened, it was known as the coronavirus. It was the coronavirus. That's what everybody called it. And so I swiped a few times down the middle of her back with an intention, just kind of imagining that this was just a cloud of energy right in her body, and swiped a few times with an intention to release that energy from her body. And then I said, okay, take a deep breath now and let's see how that is. She takes a deep breath. No coughing at all. She can't believe it. I mean, it's like a miracle. She just is blown completely away. And she's so excited. And finally, we end up at the front desk in my office talking together, and she keeps breathing deep, and she's so excited. And she finally leaves. And I walk back down the hallway, and I walk into the room, the treatment room where I had just worked on her. And as I walked through the door, I felt something enter my chest. And I thought, oh no. And I took a deep breath. And what do you think started happening? I started coughing uncontrollably. Yeah. And so I knew what had happened, but I tested myself, and it was sure enough, it was the viral energy that I had released from her just kind of hung there in the air. Okay. And then when I walked into it, immediately I had the same symptoms. Now, in terms of Western biology, this story makes absolutely no sense at all.
At all.
Because in Western biology, we know, or we believe we know, that a virus has to hijack the cellular machinery and get the DNA.
It's a material science.
Yeah, it's got to start producing copies of itself, and that takes time. And that may very well be true, and probably is true. But apparently there's also another truth, because that's exactly what really happened to me. Now, the interesting thing about this is when people do the emotion code or they do the body code, they'll sometimes, when they hear the story, they'll ask me, well, when I release trapped emotions or something from a person, what's the likelihood that energy is just going to hang there and then that I'll pick it up? And the answer to that is, this happened so that I could have this experience and tell the story. Because never in my career have I ever seen this kind of thing ever happen before or since.
It was just meant to be a learning experience.
Exactly right. Yeah, isn't that wild? So, so interesting. So pathogens are fascinating, and you never know what kind of symptoms they're going to cause. I remember once I had a patient that came in to see me. It was a young man in his mid-30s. His wife had been a patient, and she had fibromyalgia, which is pain all over in the muscles, and she had gotten totally well, so she referred her husband in to see me. And here was the story. 4 years before, this guy was a truck driver. He was driving his truck, and all of a sudden he starts getting this swelling going on in his groin, in his scrotum. And his scrotum swells up really big, and it's excruciatingly painful. He can't work anymore. He can barely walk around. And he starts seeing doctors. And nobody can figure out what the problem is. Nobody can figure it out. 2 years into this, and he's totally disabled now. 2 years into this, they do surgery on him, I think at UCLA Medical Center. And they open him up. They don't see anything. They stitch him back up again, and the swelling all comes back. His life basically, as far as he's concerned, is just over. 2 more years go by. And when he came in to see me, he was seeing doctors at Scripps La Jolla in San Diego and UCLA Medical Center. I mean, 2 of the most prestigious medical centers in the world, right? And I think that they looked at this guy as just a medical mystery that eventually they were going to figure out, but they hadn't figured it out yet. And so this guy comes into my office, and I start muscle testing and asking questions. And so I'm asking, all right, is there something I can do to help you? Is there a reason for this problem? Yes, through muscle testing, right? Well, is it on the left side of the chart? No. So is it a pathogen? Yes. So I'm taken to the pathogens area, and I find out that he's got a parasite, right? He's got a parasite. And I said to him, I think you've got a parasite. That's what your subconscious mind is telling me. Has anyone said to you, has anyone mentioned that could be a possibility for what's causing this problem? And he said, no, nobody in the 4 years he'd been seeing doctors, on a very regular basis, like monthly, nobody had ever so much as mentioned that word. He'd never heard that word from any of them. So I tested him to see. We used to use 4 different supplements for different kinds of parasites. One of those tested really strong for him. And I gave it to him, and he went home. And he wasn't going to take it. His wife, because he just didn't believe. He thought I was out of my mind, right? But his wife made him take the supplements, and there was some herbs, anti-parasitic herbs. And about 5 days later, this guy comes back into my office, and all the swelling is completely gone after 4 years of this, right? And still to this day, I think he was probably the most excited young man, that I can remember ever running into, because he was so excited. He was in his mid-30s. A beautiful wife, a couple of really cute kids, but his life was just over because of this problem. Think about that. Now, the best minds in medicine couldn't figure it out. But who knew the answer? Who knew the answer? His subconscious mind knew the answer. I didn't know the answer. I just happened to work there, and I just happened to ask the questions.
Hey there, Inspired Soul. Join in on the conversation. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What are your biggest takeaways? What are some of the greatest healings that you personally have experienced or heard of with loved ones, relatives? And are there some that have defied the sort of conventional, everyday material sort of wisdom that exists out there? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And any other questions you might have of Dr. Bradley, please leave them in the comments below as well. As discussed, he'll be back on the podcast later in the year. I'd be honored to ask some questions on your behalf. And with that, back to Dr. Bradley in today's episode.
And so now, the beautiful thing about the body code is that anybody can learn it. The book itself is really the manual for the app. If we couldn't really put everything into the book that is in the body code app itself, because there are about 1,000 pages of different kinds of things that can happen in the app. And so nobody wants to read a book that's this thick, right? But this basically gives you the guidelines of how it works. You learn how it works through this. And then the app is available, on the App Store and Google Play and so on. But this teaches you how to do it. But the beauty of it is people now are using the body code and they're healing their own family members, their own loved ones, their own pets, because this also works with pets, animals. So they're just like us, right?
Do you have an example of, you mentioned circuits and systems is like part of circuits and systems is a disconnect also from spirit and other channels like that. Do you have an example of?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in fact, let me tell you how that one really came about. Our daughter, Lizzie, like I said, is going to be 25 in a few months. Actually, she's going to be 25 in about 3 days. No, next month. Okay, anyway, sorry. This is when you have a lot of kids.
I can't believe you have 7 kids. I'm still wrapping my head around that.
Because we have 8. But anyway, when my wife was pregnant with Lizzie, about 25, 26 years ago, she was really suffering from morning sickness. the nausea of pregnancy. And she was begging me to help her. And so I'm thinking about all the things that I have tried with all of my patients over all the years that I was in practice, none of which really worked very well at all. Chewing on ginger, or wearing the little acupressure wristbands. None of those things really work. And of course, the medical profession has tried to tackle morning sickness with drugs like thalidomide, which of course were absolutely horrific and caused all kinds of birth defects and everything. So I'm thinking about, what am I going to do? How am I going to help Jean? I really don't know. None of these things that I've tried have ever really worked. So this is one of those circumstances again, right, where I asked for help. And I said, Father in heaven, if there's a better way to help Jean, help me to understand it, because nothing that I've ever used has ever worked for this. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. And boom, this answer floods in. And the answer is almost whimsical. The answer is, well, you'd feel pretty sick too if you had this new life growing inside of you, especially if your brain wasn't connected to it. And that was the answer. And I thought, wait, so it's a connection problem? It's a connection problem. So then what I did is I started muscle testing Jean and asking, okay, is your brain connected to the fetus? Yes. How about, is your brain connected to the placenta? No. Oh, so I swiped a few times to remake that connection. Is your brain connected to the placenta now? How about the umbilical cord? No. So I had to fix that by swiping a few times with intention. And then I thought, maybe it's a two-way communication. Maybe that baby has to communicate to the brain, but the brain has to communicate with the baby, right? Kind of like a walkie-talkie thing,
Yep.
Or like
Call
right
and
now, we
response.
got two-way communication.
Yeah.
So sure enough, that was true. And so I asked questions like, all right, is the fetus communicating with your brain? No. Okay, let's swipe to fix that. And by doing that, I was able to remake those connections, right? And the moment the last connection was made, the morning sickness instantly lifted completely. Now, that lasted for a couple of days. And then my wife came to me. She said, you know what? I'm starting to feel sick again. Can you check me? So I did. And found that there were a couple of things that had become disconnected again. I fixed those. Then she was fine again for about 3 or 4 days. And then it started to come back again a little bit. And there was one more thing we had to fix one more time. That was it. No more morning sickness, right? And so we actually just completed a preliminary study on this in Japan with a very famous obstetrician over there. And what we're finding is that within 3 sessions or 3 treatments with the body code, with people that are suffering from morning sickness, that about 62% have no more sickness at all, no more morning sickness at all, right? So we're really excited about expanding this study. That was just a preliminary study with a small sample group, but we're going to do a bigger one, and it's going to rock the morning sickness world, because if you think about it, somewhere between, I think the average is around 70% or so of women worldwide who suffer from morning sickness. And what a miserable thing. And it doesn't have to be, but who would have ever imagined that the actual fix for it is something that is so unbelievably simple. In fact, we have practitioners, body code practitioners. We certify people in emotion code level 1, body code level 2, belief code level 3. And we have body code practitioners now who just specialize in this in different parts of the world, because it's a huge audience, right? It's a huge market. You got all these women at any given time in a community that are pregnant and are sick. And so to be able to get relief from that, it's really funny, because these women that I've worked on, they always say the same thing. If they're really sick and really suffering from this, the moment we remake those connections, they always say the same thing. They always say, oh, I feel so much better. I'm going to go get something to eat now, because they're starving, right? Because they just can't eat, and things smell weird, and they throw up, and oh man. Yeah. But it can be really debilitating. Sometimes women will have morning sickness and be bedbound, for months, sometimes for an entire pregnancy. So that's how this whole thing came about, with this section in the body code that has to do with disconnections between the spirit and the physical body. So that was the beginning of it. But, I always used to wonder, well, as a chiropractor, right, I used to wonder about the bones. Well, the bones are connected to the muscles, and why does a bone stay out of alignment if the subconscious mind, if the brain is in control of all those muscles, couldn't the brain just realign that bone itself? Why doesn't it do it? What's the reason?
Great question.
Well, sometimes the reason is because the spirit and the physical body are disconnected in some way. The first time I saw this was a woman who had fallen down the stairs, this whole entire flight of stairs, and had gotten pretty traumatized. And basically what I believe is that we really are spirit beings, right? And so, and not everybody believes that, but I do, and I think it's really true. We, while we're alive, we're in these physical bodies, right, that are mortal and that eventually die. And the spirit, I believe, lives on, right? And that's why people have these near-death experiences, and there's countless thousands of those. And I love listening to those, by the way. They're really fun, and reading those. But what had happened with this woman was that the spirit within her had gotten, when she fell down the stairs and was so traumatized, that spirit had gotten knocked out of her body to a pretty good degree. And so there was a lot of misalignment going on. And by correcting that, by bringing that spirit back into her body 100%, all those misalignments just instantly corrected by themselves. And her pain level, which was, I can't remember now, it was like an 8 or a 9, from the base of her skull all the way down to her tailbone, that pain level went to about a 2, just instantly, just from bringing the spirit back into her body where it belonged, right? Back in, I think it was 1905, these scientists were trying to do a study on the human spirit and to determine if there was a spirit. Because their theory was, okay, if there's really a spirit in the body, it might have a certain small amount of weight. And when a person dies, if the spirit actually leaves the body, maybe there will be a change in the weight of the body, right? Interesting, huh? And so what they did is they got this really, really fine scale that was big enough to put a person on. And then they performed this study where when a person was close to death, they'd bring them in and lay them on this scale. And they would get their weight exactly, okay? And then when the person would die, they found that on average, the body would lose about 21 grams of weight. Not a lot, okay, but 21 grams. And so...
But not nothing.
Not nothing, exactly, not nothing at all. And so they believed, okay, that's how much the spirit weighs on average. And it was interesting because they found that some people, that the moment of death, there wouldn't be a change. Sometimes it would take some time, and then all of a sudden it would change. Almost like they're dead, but they're still in their body. And then some people would leave the body right away. And, and of course, people have seen the spirit, since time out of mind. Since for as long as we have recorded, histories and records and things. It's a real thing. And so that's one of the fascinating things that you'll find in the body code is how to fix problems like that, where the spirit's not quite in the body. Sometimes the spirit will be in the body, but it won't be really communicating with the physical body in some way. And so, that experience that I had with my wife that led to this amazing breakthrough with morning sickness has led to some other really fascinating things that you won't really see, I think, anywhere else except in the body code. I have to tell you, it's really funny. I was so excited, after this was shown to us, because I never would have figured it out on my own. I don't have that kind of imagination. And that's how it is with many things that are in the work that we do. But I thought, okay, this is amazing. Women need to know about this. So we're going to do a study. And so back when I was in practice, we took out a big ad in the paper, free morning sickness help, just come to our clinic and, no charge, et cetera. And it cost me quite a bit of money to do this ad. And we had one woman that showed up, and we were able to help her. But I guess everybody else was too sick, or But now we actually have this preliminary study that we have done, and it's actually mind-boggling the difference that this makes. Because normally when you're doing a research study, if you can get a 1% or maybe a 2% change, that's huge. I mean, we're talking orders of magnitude change. I mean, just massive, massive differences. So kind of fun.
So many questions at this juncture. One of them is I'm resting in this awareness now that the body is it's a field of intelligence in many ways that it's walking around in, rather than this very hard material thing that you've been able to support. And I'm really digging that there's 6 areas of imbalance that we can address: the energies, the circuits and systems, the toxins, the pathogens, the misalignments, and nutrition and lifestyle. And they all sort of play into each other. It's interesting also that in some ways, this field of intelligence that we're carrying is carrying these ailments, almost calling us to fix them. And then also the solutions are also coming from the same field of intelligence in some ways. Mm-hmm. That's one of the fascinations, is like the body is hurting, but also the solutions are in the body. And that's kind of this trippy thing that I'd like to get addressed with yourself. And then the other thing is, there's a few things that you've used interchangeably, which are quite fascinating, by ways of, you've got your subconscious and your conscious intention and your prayer, which is working to some degree. Well, not to some, quite well. And then also you've got the subconscious of the individual that's presenting. But then you've also got this higher power, and just like, where does one's subconscious end, the other one's begin? Where does the higher power kick in? Like the interdynamics between those two, and like maybe it's just a boundaries question in my mind, trying to understand where one ends and the other begins. So those are a couple of questions. Yeah.
Well, I think that it's a great question, really, and it's very deep. And I'll try to share what I think about this, and I may be wrong, but I believe that there is an energy that emanates from the presence of God that fills the universe, kind of like the Force in Star Wars. It's in everything, it's through everything, it gives life to everything, right? Like the Force. And I believe that actually is real, that exists. We don't call it the Force, but it's it goes by other names. I mean, the name that I would use for it would be the light of Christ. This pure, really what it is it's love, I think. It's unconditional love that fills the universe, that keeps all the planets in their orbits, that keeps our hearts beating and keeps our bodies functioning and so on. So there's that. But then in combination with that is this massive intelligence that is within each one of us. And it is the I am, if you will, within each one of us that is, I believe, is capable ultimately of becoming like God. I think that we all are gods and goddesses in embryo, and that we ultimately have that capacity. Just like an acorn falls from an acorn tree, well, it might not look like much now, but 100 years from now, it might be gigantic, right? And so I think that one of the most exciting things about our being is that we have this nature. It's who we really are, I believe. We have come from a divine place, and we have this ability to grow to an infinite degree and expand, and that's why we're happiest when we're creating. You look at people who retire and then they stop creating, and then pretty soon they're dead, in a year or two, right? Because that drive to create is so powerful. Well, it should be, because God is our Father and He is the Creator, right? And so,
it's
so that's exciting.
Force.
One of the interesting things that bears on this discussion is an experience that I had. for a long time, I used to teach what everybody else taught, and that was that we use about 10% of our intelligence consciously, right? And the rest of our intelligence is doing something else. So after quite a few years of teaching that, I started thinking, we're all so dumb. Maybe we're using 5%. That makes more sense to me. Okay, so I taught that for a number of years. And then one day, it was only like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I had the realization that I had never really asked about this. How much of our intelligence do we use consciously? And so I prayed about this and started testing to see what kind of an answer I could get. And the answer that I got still kind of blows my mind because, but you can try this yourself, or any of you that are listening or watching, if you know how to do this muscle testing, you can ask and see what answer you get. What I got was that we use 0.000000001%. Think about that. That's 8 zeros after the decimal point and a 1. That's how much of our intelligence.
As a percent as well. Like, that's two other zeros as a decimal. That is, geez
it's
Louise.
Infinitesimally tiny. And so what does that mean? Well, I don't know. I don't know completely, but I think that I think we spend a long, long time preparing to come here to this world. And I think that these subconscious minds that we have, I think they're very, very involved in creating millions of new cells every minute and creating, new life and creating, keeping your heart beating and keeping all of these things functioning. I don't think that that's all just from the external God source. I think that our own subconscious computer systems are doing this for us. So you think about that level of intelligence. It's a level of intelligence beyond our ability to even comprehend. I mean, trillions of chemical reactions going on every minute. Who can keep track of that? You'd have to have a supercomputer, And so I think that we are a supercomputer beyond our ability to understand inside. And so our ability to access all of that is very, very limited. I mean, think about it. We're born, we come into this world, our memories of our life before, wherever we were, those are totally wiped out, right? I like to call it a veil that is put over our minds. So we have no memories. We have total amnesia about where we were before. We don't know. All we know is this world. And unfortunately, as you know, we almost immediately start being lied to, right? By well-meaning people. And that's life on planet Earth. But
Santa's coming this Christmas, by the way.
Yeah, exactly right. As well as all kinds of other things, like what we're capable of and what we can't do. And oh man, so it's so interesting that we have this. We're in this situation, and I believe there are absolutely divine reasons for this. We are here, I think, in a perfect environment for us to be able to make decisions for good or bad. What are we going to do? Are we going to choose light or dark? And we're free to choose light or dark. We can choose whatever it is we want. And at the end of our life, whether we've made good choices or bad choices, we learn either way, don't we? We learn, I remember when I turned 60, the most striking thing to me was looking back on my life and looking back on the lives of the people that I've known and seeing how small decisions made decades ago have played out, not only in my life, but also in the lives of these other people, right? We make these little decisions and, you make one decision and then suddenly that pathway is closed to you and now you're going down a different path, right? And at any individual moment, you've got almost an infinite number of choices that you can make. But as you make those decisions, then eventually you're kind of going down a certain path. So it's really interesting. One day, I had this experience that I'll try to share with you. I was 18 years old, and I was just sitting, just quietly meditating. And all of a sudden, I had this experience that lasted for about maybe 3 or 4 seconds. I don't think any longer than about 4 seconds. And I'll try to describe this. Have you ever been really, really homesick, Amrit?
In certain moments, yeah.
Yeah, certain moments. And I had too. But all of a sudden, I was instantaneously filled with this homesickness that was completely off the chart, clear out of the solar system. I mean, it was unbelievable. And it was a homesickness to be back where I was before I came here. I think back where we all were, right? With God. And it lasted just for a few seconds, but it was so overwhelming and so powerful. It was like this window opened and then closed. And it wasn't that I could see anything or remember anything. The homesickness itself was so absolutely overwhelming that I can't even really describe it. And suddenly that window closed and it just left me reeling. And I understood from that a couple of things. I understood, and I know that these things are true, that we are just strangers here in this world, right? That's one thing. And the other thing is that it's a very, very good thing that we cannot remember where we were before we came here. Because if we could, I believe we would not be able to stand it in this world for 5 minutes. And I really believe that's true. So it's like we're born into, in a way, it's like we're born into hell. We get to make these choices and so on. There's a lot of gnarly things that go on. And there's a lot of difficulty and tragedies and everything else. But I saw a near-death experience recently that I thought was really cool that bears on this. This guy dies and he's dead for like 2 hours, I guess. Or he's on the other side for a couple of hours or something. Anyway, they bring him back. And he remembers everything. And one of the really interesting things is that he's in this big, huge room, and there are all these arches, like little portals on both sides of the room. And he'll see a person go into a portal on one side, and then a little bit later, he'll see that same person come out as an old person on the other side of the room. And then within a few seconds, they transform and they're young again, right? And apparently they're going to all kinds of different planets and different worlds. And he's told by his guide, this angel, I guess, that, she said, you could have gone to any of an infinite number of worlds, but she said, you chose to go to the earth because you wanted to progress as fast as you possibly could. And that's why people go to the earth, because it's a very, very difficult place to go. Is that interesting? So I think eventually we'll get to the other side and we'll have stories to tell. People will come up to us, Amrit, and they'll say, you were on the earth? Wow, what was that like?
Such a trip. Yeah. It's the soul's evolution in the time that it's here is a fascinating piece. Thank you so much for highlighting that's very interesting. One of the questions I had coming into today's podcast was, you also have this profound awareness of the body's, I don't know if I can use the word biomagnetic field, but this biomagnetic field, maybe it's a magnetic field, maybe it's a biofield. But then there's also stuff in our system that we carry through different generations,
right,
and that trauma. And it's interesting because when I'm talking to you, even now at this particular point in the conversation, I end up, the old double slit experiment where particle, where wave and light. When I'm talking to you, I end up feeling much more wave than particle, And so It's hard for the mind to then contemplate how is the transference happening. Like, let's just call it like generational trauma, let's say, that we're carrying that in our systems. Like we're carrying that in the field rather than in the material, like that. Your thoughts, your insights on how that is.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, this was kind of the question that I think some doctors had after they did this study. I think it was about 15 years ago I believe it was in Atlanta, where they were studying traumatic inheritance in mice. And so what they did is they took groups of mice, and one group of mice, they would blow the scent of cherry blossom into their cages. When they were beginning to smell the cherry blossom scent, they would give them a mild electrical shock in the cage. And so pretty soon they started to associate the cherry blossom scent with the shock, Pavlovian kind of a response. And then they found that the offspring of those mice that had been sensitized were also sensitized, even though in their lifetime they had never smelled cherry blossom or they'd never been shocked. They found that those offspring, for many generations down the line, if they would smell cherry blossom, they'd immediately have a fear reaction, right? So they didn't know how this was working. So what they did is they took sperm from mice that had been sensitized, took that sperm across to the other side of campus, and impregnated a bunch of female mice that had never smelled cherry blossom in their whole lives and had never been shocked ever, and their offspring were sensitized to that. And so, I can imagine these doctors looking at DNA under the microscope and trying to figure out how in the world is this happening? Well, this is a quantum phenomenon, you see. It's not a physical phenomenon. And that's why, Western medicine has kind of been stumped about this. But, there have been books written about people who were the offspring of the descendants of Holocaust survivors. And sure enough, those people are different from average people. Their DNA is a little bit different. They're way more susceptible to illnesses and stresses and adrenal fatigue and so on. So, we know what this is. This is this quantum phenomenon of what we call emotional baggage, trapped emotions. And it's an amazing thing. And we teach this, of course, in the body code and in the emotion code. And essentially what happens is, if you think about an animal. Let's imagine that you're a moose, okay? And you're at a certain area on the mountain and you're almost taken down and killed by some wolves. Well, you escape from them, but now you probably have some trapped emotional energy, fear, panic, whatever it might be, about that experience. Now, if you contribute to the creation of an offspring, your subconscious mind might decide, okay, that was really important. We almost died. Let's share that information. And so that information gets shared as an emotional energy, right, down the line. And so it may be that for generations, moose will avoid that area. They won't know why, but if they get close to that area, they'll decide, no, you know what, I'm not going to go there. I sense something about that area. Let's go somewhere else. And that's how it works in the animal world. But it works the same way in our world, see? But for us, it's more like, oh, your ninth grade grandfather was thrown in the poorhouse. And so that energy now that's been passing down the line, that grief or hopelessness about money now is in you. And that's why you have a hard time making money, because you're carrying that energy. And the beautiful thing now is that we know how to release these. And it's not difficult to do, using the body code, using the emotion code. It's the same process. It's really simple. But we've had some pretty interesting things happen with this. And one of the really interesting things is that it seems that these spirits that are our departed loved ones, that are also holding these energies, when a trapped emotion like this is released from a living human being, and it's been passed down from 10, 20 generations ago, all those ancestors experience a release as well. Because, and the really weird thing about this, think about this, Amrit, and that is that when a trapped emotion like this is created, it's just one energy. And in quantum physics, basically, we know that one energy can theoretically exist in an infinite number of places at one time. And that's how it works with these trapped emotions. So in other words, if you have a trapped emotion that occurred maybe 20 generations ago to someone, maybe a grandmother of yours was jilted at the altar, 20 generations back, and that maybe that emotion of forlorn has been passing down the line. If we release that from you, it releases from everybody else in the line, even though, some of them have been dead for many, many, hundreds of years. And that might seem really crazy, but we just rely on the subconscious mind, and it knows these things. And in fact, I have to tell you a story about this, if I can. I got a lot of stories. But I remember once I was doing a talk about the emotion code. There were about 300 people in the audience, and I asked if there was anybody that was really in pain. In fact, I said, if you feel like nobody else in this room could possibly be in more pain than you, then I want you to come up. And so this lady comes up, and she hobbles up to the stage. She's got pain in her hip, and it's been going on for a whole year. She's seen some different doctors for it, but they can't figure it out. And so her pain level is a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale. And so, in fact, she practically needed a crutch. She was, just limping so bad. So I tested her and found, I don't remember exactly what it was. I found one imbalance and cleared that, and it took the pain level down to a 4, from a 9 to a 4. And then I found she had an inherited trapped emotion. And the emotion was fear, and it went back 12 generations on her father's side. Now, what I've done for many, many years at that point, if I'm doing a lecture like this live to an audience, at that point, what I'll do is I'll have the person I had her hold out her arm. And and I said, okay, are these ancestors here with us? Yes or no? And the answer is yes. It's always yes. They're always with us, right? So just for fun, I asked, where are they? Are they floating around in the air over the audience? That was a no. Are they sitting out there, in the audience? Are they sitting on people's laps? No. Are they up here on the stage with us? Yes. And they're always on the stage, when I'm teaching like this. They come because they love that person. They're the ancestors. They're the grandfathers, the grandmothers. This is one of their descendants. So they're there because they love that person, but also they're there because they're about to have something significant happen to them. And that's the release of this emotional energy, right? Now, in this case, it was fear. And so okay, fine. I went ahead and swiped 10 times down her back. We do 10 swipes down the back with a magnet or your hand to release an inherited trapped emotion. So then I said, okay, walk around, let's see how it feels. She starts walking around, and then she starts dancing because the pain is completely gone, right? And so she goes back out and sits down, and I finish my lecture, and I go back to our tables where we have our staff. And right after I got there, this woman comes up to me. And this story, by the way, is in the Body Code book. I tell this in there. This lady comes up, and she tells me this story. She said, Dr. Nelson, she said, I was in your class where you released that inherited trapped emotion from that lady. And she said, I just want you to know I'm one of those people that has the gift of being able to see spirits that other people don't see. And she said, I just wanted you to know that that what you said was true, that I could see those ancestors, those grandfathers. It went straight back up the father's line. And she said, I could see all of them standing there just like you said. But she said, there was something else going on that I don't know that you're aware of. She said, what else I saw was that surrounding the stage were about 200 spirits. And it came to me who they were. These were the spirits of her yet to be born posterity. And they were there rejoicing that they weren't going to have to take on this crippling emotional energy, that it was being released. It had already gone, 12 generations down the line, and they were just thrilled. We were having a party that this is gone. We didn't have to deal with this. Isn't that interesting? And so,
fascinating.
So this can, it can seem kind of different or kind of out there, but I'm telling you, mankind is waking up. We're waking up to who we really are. We're waking up to the fact that we are divine beings, that we're not here by some kind of happenstance, that we're here for for very special, very divine, sacred purposes. Life itself is sacred, and we're here to have these experiences and make our choices for good or bad, and we're here to learn. And then, it's interesting because when people die and they pass to the other side, they'll often have a life review. And the interesting thing is there doesn't ever seem to be any judgment there. They get to see their life oftentimes in great detail. And one of the interesting things is that oftentimes people will be able to experience interactions with other people through the eyes of the people that they were interacting with, and they'll be able to comprehend the effect that their words or their actions had on other people. It's really fascinating. And it's all about our own growth. And, people are never asked how fancy of a car they drove or how big of a house they lived in or how much money they made. Never. Instead, they're asked questions like, how much knowledge were you able to gain? But most importantly, they're asked, how much love were you able to develop? What's your ability to love others like? See? And there we come to, I think, one of the very most important reasons for life, and that is to learn to love others unconditionally, to accept, to not resist, to learn to love ourselves unconditionally, which can be the hardest. We can be the hardest person of all to love unconditionally because we were there and we knew better and we made those stupid mistakes. And so many of us spend our lifetimes, being critical of things we did 20, 30, 40 years ago, or even longer, stupid things we did when we were someone that we are no longer, right? We change and we heal, and it's a beautiful thing. And so we all need forgiveness, right? We all need leniency. We all need mercy because we've all made stupid mistakes. And hey, that's just how it is. Welcome to planet Earth, right?
Oh, Dr. Bradley, there is so much left to be discussed in today's podcast, but also recently we had Neil Donald Walsh on the podcast. He wrote the books Conversations with God. Yeah. And in his yesteryear, he also apparently was hosting. We had some really fascinating conversations about hosting radio channels. And an interesting thing he said to me, he's like, a good radio host knows what questions to ask. A great radio host knows when the mic drop happens, basically, and to wrap up the podcast. And so that's I can taking a leaf out of his book. Despite all the questions I still have brimming, because you've got a new book coming out. The Heart Code is emerging, and you're critically acclaimed for the work around the heart wall as well. I remember from the Emotion Code, that was like a huge body of work that really helped me shift some stuff as well, which was really profound. So I'm keen to dive in deeper into that conversation, but I'm sure we can, if you're open to it, reserve it for another podcast. And
sure.
Absolutely. It'd be an honor to have you back on. And all of that to say, thank you so much for your time, your energy, sharing yourself here so abundantly with us today. And I think everybody tuning in can attest, it's so easy to tell that this is not just today's conversation. This is your life's work, and your own life's journey and story. There's so much of you woven into everything that you're sharing that, brother, just really, really grateful for you doing the work that you are and showing up to share this with us today is just the cherry on the cake. Thank you so much.
Well, that's so kind of you, Amrit. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this work with some more people. This is my mission, is to just get this out to as many people as I possibly can while I can. And because, the consciousness level of the world is expanding and we're waking up, like I was talking about before, to who we really are and what we're capable of. And guess what? We can do a lot of healing work ourselves. And the power lies within us, and these books, the Emotion Code, the Body Code, soon the Heart Code, are really all about taking back our natural birthright, to be able to heal. So fun stuff.
Amen. You inspired soul, you made it through to the end of another incredible episode. Thank you so much for your inspirations to evolve. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. I want to take a quick moment out to thank all of you that are subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love, support. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. We could not be doing what we are if it wasn't for your support. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please join the movement. Hit that subscribe button below, hit the bell notification icon. It helps with everything we're doing here, promoting love, positivity, wisdom, and wellness around the world. Thank you so much in advance for your support. On screen now, I'm going to put on the episode we previously did with Dr. Bradley Nelson on the emotion code and understanding how to shift emotions that then actually manifest into the body the way that we were discussing in the body code. So preliminary to the body code is the emotion code. And also on screen are another couple of episodes that YouTube has hand selected for you, determining that they're going to be the best episodes that are just aligned to what you want to watch to continue your inspiration to evolve. Onwards, upwards, and inwards. I'll see you in the next one. Go on, take your pick, make your click. I'll see you there.